The Year Eternal Reward is one of Spy's best weapons, and I'm tired of hearing people call it Spy's worst weapon without using it. The Year is one of my most used knives. Spy is one of my most played classes, and so I think I might know what I'm talking about. Today, I'm going to explain why the Your Eternal Reward, Year for short, is one of Spy's most effective, unique, and skillful weapons. Let's do our obligatory rundown of the weapon. The Year has two upsides and two downsides. You have silent backstabs that don't show up in the kill feed or make any noise other than the stab sound, and you disguise as your target on backstab. But, in exchange, you have an increase of 33% on your cloak gain rate, and disguising uses up your whole cloak meter. Now, people who say that the Year is bad will explain why the upsides are mediocre and the downsides far too punishing. So I'm going to explain why most of these arguments don't hold up exactly. Firstly, silent backstabs do work. People, when they have even the slightest thing holding their attention, won't notice you stabbing people unless they blatantly see you do it, and even then, some people will miss it. And the disguise on kill is a phenomenal ability. Heck, the Year would probably hold up pretty well with just this ability, as it is the foundation of the weapon. Now for the downsides. Let's dissect the reasons the Year is bad. Number 1. The cloak terrain makes it impossible to travel without the Electron J, which basically gives no advantage compared to using it with any other knife. Well, check out this new tech. It's called using ammo pickups. Cool, right? You ideally should already be using this. I mean, I spend nearly 25 seconds cloaked in this clip using pickups in the Electron J. It would just get good. Number 2. The inability to disguise is crippling. Fun fact, you can disguise for free while on spawn, and then keep that, like 90% of spies do. Sure, you can't do it well, but ideally you shouldn't have to disguise because you're landing backstabs, which give you a free disguise. Oh, but it takes a full cloak meter away to get a new one. Check out this new tech out. It's called using ammo to refill your cloak. Seriously, cloak management is key to getting good with the Year, but once you can competently manage it, it doesn't come back into play much. It's one of the easiest of the Year skills that you need. Number 3. Disguises don't fool good players. Yes, disguises that you use don't work, but the Year fixes the issue of that. In the case of highly organized competitive players that will broadcast any kills you get to the rest of their team, well, you probably shouldn't be playing Spy in competitive, unless you maybe have 1,000 hours on him. And Spy isn't used ever in 6s in the first place, because that problem isn't Year specific.
Disguise glitches are rare and actually require you to have enough time to get a good look at someone, which you shouldn't be doing in a firefight. And the falling ragdoll isn't that easy to see. People are a lot more oblivious than you might think. And if someone isn't falling for your disguise, it's not like they wouldn't have caught on if you weren't using the Year.
Communication totally counters the silent backstab. Listen, TF2 players never talk. Or, they talk so much you can't hear too much over your team.
Hey guys, did you know that in terms of male, human, and female Pokemon breeding, Vaporeon is the most compatible Pokemon for humans? Not only are there in the female egg group, which is mostly composed of mammals, Vaporeon is an average 3
Also, you can totally outplay people by getting a stab and to change your disguise, so they start looking for the wrong person. I get 3 stabs in this clip, and the guy says I'm a medic and a soldier. If I was on his team, I would have no idea what he was talking about.
I'm dead. Spy me, spy me, spy me. Spy soldier. Spy.
Continuing this, people suck at communicating in general. That's why callouts exist. If you don't formalize it, you permit dangerous errors to happen, and in high-level play, you need to be able to communicate efficiently and effectively. So that's why in games like CSGO, you need to clearly tell health, location, and what their current action is. But calling out a spy is difficult. Let's see all the ways this can go wrong. Spy tells us nothing. Spy behind you heavy, for example, still won't work if you're disguised because they assume an obviously disguised spy will be there, not their teammate they just spy checked. Spy medic can get you in trouble if you aren't acting well enough, but it has the same issue that the previous callout had. People are going to look for a spy approaching, not the medic who is sitting with you for the past minute. As a tip to you, the viewer, the best thing you can do when calling out a spy is by explaining what your teammates should look out for from your callout. who the spy is disguised as, if he has a disguise, and where the spy is at, normally in relation to one of your teammates. It's also really interesting to me how the year operates on an inverse effectiveness to ease of use ratio. The less kills you get, the less people know about you, meaning the less you need to worry about paranoid players. But do well, and odds are there's going to be more than a few pyros eager to chase you down. But luckily in the heat of the moment, if you can work fast enough, you can outstab callouts, rendering them useless, distracting, and confusing. Alright, that's swell and all, but why would you want to use the year? Just because a weapon isn't bad doesn't mean it's necessarily better than its counterparts. But the year also has an advantage here due to some special features it has. The instant disguise makes it easier for you to be in the action for longer. Instead of being a hit-and-run class, the year turns spy into someone whose job is to act and get kills for longer periods of time. This eliminates the need to run away and get back in as much as the other knives have to do. People are surprisingly oblivious. You can make some pretty blatant stabs and get away with it, too, though not always. It also helps that the instant disguise makes dealing with NG's nests light years easier. Normally, if you aren't a reflex god, you have to get away with sapping and sentry so you don't get blown to bits after you hopefully kill the engineer. But since most good engineers know to get rid of the spy and then the sapper, you have to deal with trying to backstab an engineer who's going right for you. But the yurt makes taking out NGs a breeze. You can easily stab a distracted NG and sap the sentry at your leisure. But where the Yur really shines is chain stabs. Normally, a team that lets you get 3 kills without noticing you is doing pretty bad. But the Yur's instant disguise lets you take out large chains of people without them noticing you. This is where the Yur's specialty is. Instead of making it easier for you to bridge the gap between targets or giving you more survivability post-stab, the Yur has an easier job taking out groups of enemies who are all preoccupied with something else, mostly your team. This means you should try to go for larger chain stabs instead of isolated kills because God knows you're getting away with it. So, how does the Yur stack up against the other knives? Well, the Yur actually has a different playstyle compared to the normal spy. As a normal spy, you need to sneak in and pick people off, but while using the Yur, you need to blend in with the other team, and if you do so well, you get lots of kills that can actually lighten the load on the rest of your team. I think that both have their merits, but it is worth mentioning that the Yur is a lot easier to use if you aren't as good at spy plays. Each knife has some specialty. The Spicicle makes Pyro easier to escape, Stock has no downsides, the Bigger makes it easier to run back in or out, and the Kunai gives you increased survivability after a kill. All the knives lie somewhere on this scale of pre to post stab advantages, with the Spicicle on the far pre-stab advantage and the Kunai on the far post-stab advantage. As you go farther to the right, the harder it becomes to actually get in with the downsides you're given. The Yur's final advantage is that it doesn't have a health penalty. You can keep a single disguise and work around cloak penalties, but a health penalty can always bite you in the ass no matter how good you are. Alright, now that I've defended the Yur a whole bunch, you're probably wondering how to actually use it. Well, the Yur strategy can be split into 3 distinct parts: getting in, getting kills, and going out, with the bank sometimes. Let's begin with getting in. Of course, the most important thing to start with is your disguise, so let's go through each class and how good they are at getting in through the enemy team. Starting with the worst disguises for getting in, we have Soldier, Heavy, and Engineer. The first 2 are too slow to be effective. And Engineer, while good in a few scenarios, is so ineffective that you might be better off going in as one of the first 2. Also, NGs tend to stay in one place, making them more likely to catch you disguised as them. Next up, we have Pyro. Now, I know there's a few people out there who love disguising as Pyro, but I implore you, do not. First of all, if someone is going to screw you over, it's going to be a Pyro. So if there's one person you don't want finding you out, it's the Pyro you disguised as. Also, some people with a lot of experience, or someone like me, know that people who disguise as Pyro live and die by it. They will not change it ever. And it's the most predictable thing ever, especially since it's such an anomaly. With the demo, he's fine, not as good as other classes. Medic should be a wild card. Use him once, then drop it. Nobody expects it once, but everyone expects it a second time. Also, make sure to switch to your sapper and press B to whip out your medi beam. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty obvious if you're holding your syringe gun. Last of all, we have the big 3: Scout, Sniper, and Spy. Sniper is an excellent disguise to reverse the back lines with, though avoid being noticed by them, as Jiraiya will really ruin your day. Next we have Scout, who is best because of his high mobility. The only caveat here is that everyone expects spies to disguise as him to a point where it's almost cliche. Last of all, and my favorite, is Spy. He is supposed to be with the enemy team, he has no movement penalty, and he isn't Scout. You don't need to think too hard about this, given that you should be cloaking a lot in order to get in, but it does definitely help. Next we have the watches. While each watch has their use cases, stock definitely comes out on top here. Being able to get pickups without decloaking gives this thing a monumental advantage over the other watches. Pickups let you do some incredibly ballsy maneuvering without having to worry about cloak as much. Unfortunately, the cloak and dagger isn't as good. The infinite cloak while standing still doesn't outweigh how hard it is to move around with this. It can be done, but in most cases I find myself using it like a worse version of stock. Last of all, we have the Dead Ringer. Ooh, scary. While this watch sucks because of how much it clashes with the year, it does have one niche use case. If you have your disguise from spawn, which you should always have, and need to get through the enemy line, but maybe it's too cramped, or there's too many people shooting, or you're being spawn camped, this watch excels at busting through the enemy team's front lines, if you're having trouble with it. Of course, there isn't much to help you if you mess up, as you can't really regen the ringer fast, and disguising will take up all your cloak, but if you don't mess up, the Dead Ringer can really work. And of course, last of all, we have the revolvers. Keep in mind, I will only be talking about how they help you get in this section, not how good they are in combat. That comes later. And only one revolver actually helps with getting in, the Electron J. Seriously, there's a reason this always gets paired with the year. Having normal cloak is super helpful, especially if you don't use your revolver for combat much. There isn't much else to say here, as all the other revolvers lack any passive buff. Between these three watches, you have a few options for getting in among the enemy team. I personally use stock for the ammo pickups. When it comes to actually navigating while invisible, it's a lot like normal spy. Get as many pickups as possible, and do your best to avoid enemy fire. So long as you don't get noticed, don't worry about being hit by any stray bullets. I find that it's surprisingly easy to dodge enemy fire, given that most hit scan weapons aren't great at spraying, with heavy being the exception. The best advice I can give is to try and be as hard to hit as possible. So generally avoid getting stuck between a firefight and get out of there fast. Now that you've gotten in among the enemy team, it's time to step up the action. Decloaking is difficult. You need to stay close enough where it's plausible that you're a member of the other team, but not too close that it's obvious that you're decloaking.
You have two options here. The first one is to hide. Corners are your friend. Hiding lets you decloak and sneak back in, without it being too obvious. It's even easier if the enemy team is preoccupied.
The second option is to get a kill from farther back so as to down and disguise the people seen on their way to the front. Snipers are a good choice for this, because they tend to be easy kills, assuming they aren't using the Razorback. Other classes can work better, as Sniper shouldn't be too close to the action. And if the other team doesn't have a teleporter, then you can blend in as someone walking to the objective. As a rule, the more obscure the better. Just get stabs in anyone you can. Now it's time to, hopefully, get your first kill. Let's talk about acting. Acting is a key component to the Europe playstyle. Knowing how to divert suspicion from you as best as possible can really save your neck. Let's talk about acting strategy for each class. The Scout is the worst class to try and act at. He primarily should be used to get a different disguise as soon as possible. This is because of the slowdown that's going to give you away. Soldier is a good class to disguise as. He doesn't have any special actions like revving or scoping in, and if you jump around a bit, you can pretend like you're just looking for people to shoot at. He also is one of the most popular classes for medics to heal. Pyro, if you can step in, is a really good class. Generally, avoid being in a place where using your flamethrower would be effective. Instead, switch to your secondary and pretend to be spamming down chokes. Demo is the same case as Soldier, just pretend to be busy. If your disguise is Demo Knight, then I would advise pretending to be loitering around till your charge refills. Heavy is good, as no spy in their right mind would disguise as him voluntarily. Use his slowness to fall behind the enemies near you, then go in for a different kill. NG is best discarded as soon as possible. It's hard to sap something and then run back to the building you just sapped, pretending like you're gonna fix it. Medic is a good target not just because he's a valuable member of the enemy team, but because he also is one of the most disarming disguises in the game. As long as you don't hold out his syringe gun, you should be fine. If the medic you stabbed was healing someone, then I advise, if he has the crossbow, switch to it and pretend like you were healing someone else. or to your melee and shout spy, making as if you're on the lookout for spies. Sniper is best used to navigate the back, but it isn't good close to the rest of his team. And last of all, spy is best as a general disguise. Maybe pretend to run away from your own team. Of course, you can forget all about this if nobody notices you, which is ideal.
But an extra tip I can give to you is to ignore players spy checking you, assuming you aren't being burned, milked, or pissed on.
Because what's the most common reaction to spy checking someone on your own team? That's right, nothing. Sometimes staring at someone can trick them into believing you're a friend. Don't believe me? Check this out. I take a few shotgun shots from this guy and just stare at him, and he buys it. People are really gullible sometimes. One useful tip is that if your enemy hasn't seen you and you're stuck with a slow disguise behind them trying to catch up, it can be worth it to discard your disguise in exchange for the extra speed. It may be risky, but it can help you secure a kill. A good example is here, where this pyro is overextending super hard to kill my medic, and I can't let that happen. So I doff my disguise and comically chase after him, eventually catching him. Also, prioritize Ubered enemies, assuming they don't have stock Uber. Crits are the most likely here, but it's super important to stop Ubers if you see them. Also, the beam will automatically switch over to you if you stab a medic's patient. One point of specialty for the Ur is its high effectiveness against engineers, which we talked about before. But let's break down the process of taking out a nest. Generally, I advise killing the NG first. You can normally sap the other buildings at your leisure afterwards. As for actually getting behind him, it's best if you try and make sure the NG doesn't realize who you are. Sidestepping behind them works most of the time if they haven't noticed you. Another activity that really distracts NGs is moving or placing buildings. This is possibly the best time to strike, especially if they are moving a building. However, if the NG does realize that you're a spy, you should sap his sentry as soon as possible. This diverts the NG's attention between you and his gun, and an NG without his sentry is at a serious disadvantage. At that point, it's going to come down to how good you are at trick stabs, because you aren't really going to have an easy time taking him head on. Though if you feel confident enough, you can use a revolver to finish him off, as the building wreckage can be used to refill your cloak. Let's do a quick rundown of the 3 buildings. The sentry is first, most of the time. Take it out quickly, and your job is immensely easy. Also, the temporary disabling of the gun can buy your teammates time to destroy it manually. In most cases, you should take it out first, unless, that is, there's an active teleporter nearby. Often engineers place teleporters away from their nests, and you want this, because it means that players teleporting in hopefully won't notice you sapping the rest of the engineer's buildings. But if the teleporter is placed near the rest of the nest, get it out quickly. Enemy players add an extra variable that you really don't want to deal with. This is also the most helpful to the rest of your team, as it means they can catch a break from the enemy team, hopefully letting them push. If the engineer instead tries to get rid of the sapper, well, this is where the fun begins. See, if you keep putting sappers on the building, it'll slowly take damage, even if each sapper is removed. So playing the slow game of waiting for it to finish will normally lead to the engineer realizing they need to kill you, and then by that point, even if they do kill you, it can be too late. So make sure to try and stall for as long as possible. A useful part of teleporters is that you can go through them even if they aren't in teams. This means that if you can make the trek to your enemy's spawn without getting caught, then you can jump through and attack NG from behind, where he can't predict you coming from. So look out for buildings blocking your way. And if you don't believe that this would be realistically effective, check this out. I neatly sidestep this NG and sap all his building, and I make my getaway to the roof where I can see him removing the sapper on his teleporter.
I'm such a buffoon. I forgot that the server I'm on has instant respawn. But I have a plan. I jump down and take his teleporter right behind him, where he doesn't expect a thing. And this time I make sure to stay around to finish the job.
Last of all is the dispenser. It is best, if the nest is isolated, to not sap this thing sometimes. Dispensers give you health and ammo when disguised, so often it's best to forget it until you've dealt with the engineer. Another specialty the Ur has is tricking enemy medics into healing you. It both feels great and totally sells your disguise. Bonus points if you can make them waste an uber charge on you. Medics are most likely to heal heavies and soldiers, but a well-meaning medic might try and shoot you with a crossbow bolt, which can end up poorly for you. Now that you've gotten a kill, it's time to consider what to do next. You have 3 options. Let's start with the first one. Go for more kills. If nobody's noticed you, try and go for more kills.
Your peak usefulness will be when you take out medics in their pockets, or whole rows of unaware players.
there isn't anyone to notice you around, and you can use your gun, generally the ammo pickups you can get are enough to refill your cloak. And if you're using the Electron J, then the extra cloak on hit can really help out with redisguising. Simply remember to try and blend in, and most of the time you shouldn't have a problem with this.
Option 2. Run away.
If you're lucky or unlucky, you might find it advantageous to run like the wind. Remember, your cloak will speed you up if you have a slow disguise, which makes it easier to flee after a kill. If you're lucky, then when you look around, you won't find anyone else, and in that case, you should retreat or advance to a good hiding spot and wait for the enemy team to run back to you. If you are caught and chased away, remember to try and hide in places people already have checked, and to grab as much ammo as possible to stay cloaked. And last of all, if you can't seem to find a way out, it's time to go out with a bang. If you do find yourself in this situation, it's best to keep your cool. Panicking is the worst thing you can do, as it makes you less able to play competently. This mostly comes with practice, but it is worth mentioning. Try to pull off an extra stab before dying, or maybe use your gun to take out people with low health. Speaking of which, there's another gun worth mentioning, the Diamondback. As broken and unpopular as it might be, the Diamondback has tremendous synergy with the Ur, which might not make sense until you think about how the Ur's strong points are both sources of crits for the Diamondback. Lots of backstabs and zaps. This lets you send off your attackers with some meaty crits to chew on. And sometimes you can use it to draw people who might have otherwise killed you. The Diamondback works best as a farewell attack. It shouldn't really be used if decloaking will put you at a serious disadvantage, but if you're gonna die anyway, go for it. It feels really good when you can sneak in an extra kill before going down, like this clip, where I make a cheeky decloak, manage to counter the crits push, and barely take out this heavy. And you don't need crits to do this, it just helps. The Electron J can take out people if you connect your shots. For getting better at this, play more on Spy. Helps you get a better feel for Spy's revolvers. Last of all, fail stabs. We all have them, we all hate them. But they are super punishing with the Ur. Remember to commit to the stab. If you give up or flail around, you can miss opportunities to snag kills that would otherwise have been easy pickings. This might mean rushing to get one more kill while someone's shooting at you, or engaging in a vicious shootout with your revolver to stay alive. When you commit, you can find yourself pleasantly surprised by how well bad situations can turn out sometimes. Alright, we've gone over getting through, getting in, getting kills, and going out. Now what does this look like in practice? Let's look at a few examples. First, I get a soldier. Now I have a convincing reason to be going towards the front lines. Now I see this crits push, and I need to put a stop to that. So I stab the heavy, and make use of the fact that the medic's crits beam is now transferred to me, letting me use those self-same crits to try and get him down. Now, that was a good run. I countered an uber push and took out their medic. Next, I have some ones with some engineers. I stab this heavy and rush over to sap the teleporters, thinking that there's a spy back at their base. The enemy NG backpedals right to me. Then I run and try and sap the sentry, at which point I pretty much reveal myself. But I managed to get one more stab on this pyro before I die. Or you can check out this clip, where I backpedal away from a friendly spy who's sapping some stuff. So I let the enemy team be distracted by him while I wait for the teleporter to recharge. I telefrag someone by total coincidence, and run and get a stab on the heavy before turning around and sapping the buildings. The NG tries to break them, so I keep with the pressure until he goes after me. I wait for just long enough that the sapper finishes its work post-mortem. And since I like torturing engineers, let's have one more clip. I stab and sap this NG setup, and then go to grab a health pack, and lo and behold, when I go back, there he is again. I'm disguised as this guy. I stab him again, wait longer, now he returns, again. When I fuck up a stab on him, it's okay, because I sap his gun, and thanks to his shenanigans, I have 6 revenge crits. If this is you, my god, please stop hurting your team so much. Because after I shoot him with the revenge crits I got from him and his buildings, I go and gun down 2 more snipers. Oh, the humanity and the humor. And as if the power of the Diamondback hasn't been shown to you enough, in this clip I get a double kill, and then go up here, stare down the soldier, and kill him with my crits. And I get away with it. Oh god, why? The Ur is my favorite spy knife. It lets you play in a totally unique and unusual playstyle that you can't access with any of Spy's other knives. And I hope this video has helped to open your eyes towards the potential this knife has. Maybe give it a try sometime. Maybe don't make decisions about weapons from people who hardly even play the class for it in the first place. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for making it to the end. It took me like a month to edit this video, so I'm ready to be back to TF2. But hey, if you have any feedback on the script or the kind of editing behind the video, I'd love to hear it. I would like to make better content in the future, and I can't do that solely based off of my opinion. So, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.